Good evening. I'm Dr. Jean Bourgeois, Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at Texas State University. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to this online event presented by the Common Experience Insight Series. At Texas State, we show every student a path of opportunity. It's an essential part of who we are, the things we can do together. Everyone comes here from somewhere else, small towns, big cities, residential neighborhoods, or places on two-track roads. When Texas State's most famous alumnus, President Lyndon B. Johnson, signed the Higher Education Act on our campus in 1965, he opened the doors to students who had thought college opportunities were out of reach. Today, that social contract remains at the heart of Texas State's mission and is expressed through our strategic goals, which include promoting the success of all of our students and offering high-quality academic and educational programming. Each year, Texas State University presents an academic theme with events for everyone, students, faculty, staff, and our community. This is our common experience. Each year's common experience theme gives us a starting point we can all share. And this theme, First Approach, makes our common experience the nation's #1 initiative of its kind. Our common experience theme this year is dynamics. Now, when we say dynamics, we're talking about movement. It's motion, but it's more than that. Think of the motivating forces behind everything, everywhere. Physical forces, moral forces, driving forces. You can see and feel dynamics in patterns of growth, change, inspiration, and action. When we understand the dynamics that affect our lives, we can find ways to change the world. It's movement from where you are to where you will be. Tonight, I'm excited to introduce our Insight Series moderator and our featured guest speaker. First, our moderator. For good measure, we brought in one of our dynamic graduates, DaLyah Jones, to moderate this event. She is a first-generation Texas State alumna, class of 2016, and a staff writer for the Texas Observer. Her work has also been published in Texas Monthly, the Austin American Statesman, and NBC News. DaLyah was previously a producer for All Things Considered and a reporter for Austin's NPR station, KUT 90.5. While at Texas State, she worked at KTSW, our student-run non-commercial radio station. And now let's meet our speaker. In nearly every sense of the word, Laurie Hernandez is probably the most dynamic speaker we've ever presented. And at age 20, she is definitely the youngest. Laurie Hernandez is known for her dazzling 4 exercise routine, which earned her the nickname, the human emoji, for her outgoing facial expressions and for her grace and artistry on the balance beam. She is a second-generation mainland American, as her grandparents are from Puerto Rico, making her the first US-born Latina to make the US team since 1984. She credits her hard work, leadership skills, and her never-give-up attitude to her mom, who was in the Army Reserves while Laurie was growing up. At the 2016 Rio Olympic Games, she earned team gold and individual silver medals as part of the US gymnastics team that also included Simone Biles, Aly Raisman, Gabby Douglas, and Madison Koshin. That same year, she won the coveted Mirrorball Trophy on Dancing with the Stars season 23. Her first book, titled I Got This, To Gold and Beyond, was published in January 2017, hitting the New York Times bestsellers list. In October of 2018, she released a children's picture book, She Got This, which again made the New York Times bestsellers list. She also landed several television gigs, co-hosting American Ninja Warrior Jr. and starring in the series Middle School Moguls on Nickelodeon. Tonight, she joins us as our featured Insight Series speaker. Please welcome our moderator, DaLyah Jones, and our special guest, US Olympic gymnast, Dancing with the Stars champion, TV host, and best-selling author, Laurie Hernandez.
Hi, Laurie. How are you?
I'm good. What an intro. Oh my goodness.
I know, right? Like, Especially to be introed, beside a person as amazing as you, it's always an honor. So I'm really glad to be
Thank you.
talking.
I'm so excited to talk with you today. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. Well, just to start this whole conversation, there are several global shifts happening all simultaneously, like right now. How are you? How are you doing in all of this?
I'm hanging in there. I think just as everybody else is. I think, between the Olympic delay and the fact that the world is on fire a little bit, it definitely keeps things interesting and a little chaotic. So I think the only thing consistent right now is change, and it's starting to get a little more comfortable.
Yeah. And speaking of like getting comfortable, I know right now you're actually training for the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, which has been pushed over to 2021. How's training going right now, especially with everything changing and especially with social distancing? Are there new rules for you? What does that look like for you right now?
Yeah, currently, well, I ended up going home for a little less than 6 months, which is in New Jersey. I was with my family, my siblings, and it was wonderful. There was a gym out there that was allowing me to come in and train, and it's called ENA. I think without that, I would have been a little less than half a year without gymnastics, and that could have been, it could have made a really solid dent into next year's meet season. So I'm grateful for that. But it's been a bit of a whirlwind. There's been a lot of adapting to, I guess, new structures during practice, everybody bringing masks, everybody social distancing, different schedules, making sure that there's extra time for the athletes to stay in their spaces and have enough time to practice in one day with all those kids. So there's been a lot of different changes, but making sure that everybody's safe is the number one priority.
Exactly. And I think that this is a great segue to start talking about students when we talk about keeping folks safe, especially during now, right? So I know students at Texas State, mostly our first year students, they've been reading American Like Me, the collection of personal essays by actress America Ferrera. Your essay connects with many students' experiences, and particularly because you're a trailblazer in many ways, like first year students are, because you're a hardworking Olympian, as well as, you represent an identity that's not commonly seen in spaces that you represent yourself in. Can you talk to me a little bit about that, particularly the weight of the media pointing out that you are the first US born Latina to make the US Olympic team in 30 plus years?
Yeah, I didn't realize that was the case in 2016. For a 16-year-old, I was like, I made the Olympics. Like, I was just excited about that. I wasn't really, growing up, it wasn't that not seeing myself hindered me. It was more just like a sore thumb, I guess. And I was like, well, if I don't see anybody, then I guess I'll just do it. It was very, very childlike brain, like thinking, all right, I'll just go and it'll be fine. But I definitely noticed it. And there would be kind of times where, I'd see a gymnast with curly hair and I was like, okay, boom, she's my favorite. My mom was like, okay, I get it. So to go to Olympic trials, to do 2 days of competition, and then to finish that second day, get named to the team, and then we're all doing like these little media circle rooms. And I hear all the questions that the girls are getting, like, how long have you been training? How do you feel about making the team? And then for mine, every other question was, it's been over 30 years since a US born Latina has made an Olympic team. How does that make you feel? And I was like, oh, I didn't know it's been that long. That's a very long time. So to be able to be that representation for little girls and little boys and little kids out there, and I hope not just for gymnastics, but across other sports, and show that, it's tough when you can't see yourself, but if you don't see something that you want, then go be it.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And one of my questions for you, I'm also a first year student, and I'm kind of one of the first in my family to kind of go to a 4-year college right after high school. And I'm curious, how do you keep yourself motivated within those moments when you don't see yourself, or when you don't have a person that looks like you or who has a similar experience that you could go to for advice in the first place?
Yeah, I kind of feel this question in my chest because, with homeschooling in the 3rd grade and going to the Olympics and doing all this crazy stuff, sometimes I'm like, nobody understands me. But, the thing that keeps me floating, the thing that keeps me motivated is the fact that even though I've done some crazy stuff, the thing that makes me me is loving to connect with other people and finding the common ground and just being human. It makes me feel good to connect with others in that way. And so being able to, talk with you about, the pandemic and training, even though these are taboo subjects, but going out there, you just want to see representation. And I'm glad that we can have a platform like this where I get to share how that feels for me, and that like this is my way of connecting with other people. Sorry, I don't know if that answered the question.
Oh, I think that totally answers your question. I think that like having that human connection, like you said, and being able to relate to people is indeed what kind of gives you joy and what keeps you going through all of this, right? It gives it a humanness, right? And I particularly think about the moment where the mom and the little girl come up to you. You mentioned this in the essay, when they come up to you in the airport and the mom was like, "Thank you for not straightening your hair anytime that you went out in competition." And I'm curious to know, like, what does a statement like that even mean to you, right? Like I'm a rural bony girl from like the backwoods of East Texas, and having folks from that region come up to me and be like, "Wow, I didn't know that I could do this," is something that makes everything come full circle. And I'm curious if that is the same experience for you. And then also, like, what do you tell folks like who do come up to you and say those things?
I mean, a lot of times it leaves me speechless because I don't realize the impact that it has. But I just remember being a little kid and wanting, like, begging and wishing that I had straight hair, because all the kids in my grade at the time had straight hair, and all the kids in my class had straight hair or wavy hair. And I just like, it's not just curly, like there's a lot of hair in this head. There's a lot going on here. So, I mean,
Laurie, I get it. That's why I don't have any on my head. I get it. Like, that's why I had to cut it all off. Like,
I'm like, this is a lot. So I think to have a little girl come up and be like, I hated my curly hair, but then I saw you out there with your curls and you looked like you were just having such a good time. You were so comfortable with yourself. And I want to look like you. I want to be like you. So I told my mom I could keep my curls for picture day. And I was like, oh, that's huge.
How do you not just like start crying and you're like, oh my God, thank you. Like, thank you so much.
My brain just pulls the parachute at that point. I'm like, I'm not even here. This is too much.
What is crying? What is this? What are the feelings?
I do not see.
I get that. And I love how you brought up that human connection again, because, the media did at one point, and it still does, label you as the human emoji. And, we can all see why, right? Which is, it's not a bad thing at all. And you mention it in your essay, and you use emojis even in the text, right? Which is something so amazing, because you not only are conveying your own life story, but you're also connecting people generationally, right? Connecting to people generationally. What does that label actually mean to you? And yeah, what does it mean to you?
That label it's pretty accurate. I mean, I've had this nickname for at least 4 years now. So I think of all nicknames, that's not a bad one to have. Having my facial expressions show up without me noticing is definitely a blessing and a curse. I mean, I think one thought and it's immediate face change. And so like, if I'm frustrated, everybody knows. If I'm really excited, everybody knows. Like if I'm upset, I've gotten better at kind of like hiding it and making sure that it's like friendly, but still I think sometimes this is so expressive. But my favorite part about that is I remember when I was a little kid hearing, okay, like you're a gymnast, you are gonna have to be like kind of serious and go out on the floor and just like be confident, be mature, go out there, so with the judges. And I remember every time I was warming up for meets when I was a little kid, I couldn't help but smile while we were jogging in circles around the floor and warming up, because I was just so excited. I had so much adrenaline, like I didn't know where to put it, and it just came out of my face. And I remember, all the other girls kind of competing in floor and then being like, okay. And then me going out there and just loving it and wanting to be this little crowd pleaser. So to have that as a little girl when I first started out, and then to come in as a 16-year-old, on the biggest stage of my life, I mean, I'm competing in what's supposed to be my little box or like my little bubble, and that happens for the other 3 events. The other 3 events, like, I don't see anybody. I don't hear anybody. I am mentally like not here. You don't know me. I don't know me. But it's like when I'm out on floor and I'm competing, it feels like I'm breaking my own fourth wall in a sense where, this little bubble that I typically would put myself in is completely shattered. And I am now doing my best to get the crowd involved in what I'm doing. Because I know that if I love what I'm doing, then there's a really good chance that that could rub off on everybody. And something about going out there and having like some party music and having everybody clapping while I'm competing on some crazy stage. Like I was so nervous, and then the music came on and that was it. And if you watch the routine, I'm just smiling for like a minute and 30 seconds straight, which seems exhausting. And it was very exhausting, but it was natural because I was so happy to be there.
And I know that I'm still on the essay, but it was so amazing and just so relatable. One thing that you make clear is that family is a big aspect for you. And so one thing when you mentioned smiling and wanting to get the crowd riled up and wanting them to share this experience with you, it reminds me a lot of when you were like in your family's house, like dancing with them. And I'm wondering if that's something that you kind of bring into the room whenever you are in competition, is that kind of family and that type of connectedness.
I think so. I never really put two and two together until
maybe I'm overanalyzing here. Like
no, not at all. Because when I was a little kid, I mean, my parents love dancing and they love music and arts and cooking and just like they love having a good time no matter what it is that they're doing. And I think that really rubs off on me and my siblings and what we do next. And my brother working, I mean, his brain is just like off the charts. He graduated with a dual major in business management economics and sports management. And I'm like, yeah, no, you got the numbers, my guy. I got the physical, like it's all good. You can stay over there. But it's like when he talks about numbers and he's breaking things down for me, I don't know what he's saying, but he's so joyful about it. And he kind of pulls a me where you see me competing and it's radiant. He's glowing when he's talking about this. And my sister's a therapist and she glows when she talks about helping other people. So I think it definitely comes from the way that we were raised and the way that my parents like to do things. And, I think it's really important to, I couldn't stress enough that if it's family that you're not leaning on, then chosen family is what you go for. And that's what can bleed through everything, and it's making sure that your support system is creating who you are and it's making you the best person that you can be. And if those people are tugging you in a way that you don't want to be tugged in, then reforming it and creating those boundaries are so important, because at the end of the day, like you're stuck with you for the rest of your life. You want to be the best version of you. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of people that are going to just kind of come in and swoop and save everything. But having that support system is what's going to keep you upright the whole time.
No, I totally agree. And I think right now in a moment where we have to social distance away from each other, right? Where we have to be away from each other for each other's safety, connectedness, and making sure that those, that those connections again are maintained right now. Honestly, like it helps you just get through the hardest days. Just having somebody encourage you and show you love is really all the difference, honestly. And I totally agree.
Yeah, and especially with like being in California, I'm super blessed. I got the best of both worlds. I have, my parents and two older siblings. I'm the baby. And then I have chosen family out in California because, everybody else is across the country. I have people that I can lean on, here as well. So it's a very interesting thing, but connection is just so, so important. And I was even reading on a different topic, but have you heard of the book, like The Body Keeps Score?
Oh, I love that book so much. It's so good.
Ooh, okay. So there's one part of that my friend had it and she was like, you need to read this. And I was like, oh my God, the audacity, but you're not wrong.
But when you read it, you were like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Right. And there's one part that they brought out that was like, fight, flight, or freeze. Mm-hmm. And they talk about, the first thing that we look for just as human beings, aside from our jobs and aside from our hobbies and everything else, we seek connection. If like the economy and every building in the world just crumbled, we're going to look for connection. That's our first thing. But a lot of times when we're panicking and we get nervous, then we feel alone. And then the next step of that is to freeze and to get stuck here. And it's such an interesting concept because it's like, if you're in the middle and you're in that like tug of war, like I feel like I'm alone, I feel like I'm about to be stuck, then the way to get out of that is to connect with people and to reverse it, to go the other way. And that was just so interesting to me. And like, I remember kind of freaking out over something the other day, and everything felt like stone, but I was driving my friend's house, and it was the first time I had really done that, because I was like, oh my God, this book said to reverse it, so I'm gonna listen. So yeah.
No,
So
I
random.
totally agree. No, once I like finally like, so I did the audio book because I was like driving across Texas when I listened to it, and I was like, read me to filth in this car. Like, all of this makes sense. I was like, I need this to be like mandatory in every single class, like, or like grade.
I am so surprised that anything in the book is not really taught in public schools, or I was homeschooled, but like public schools. I'm like, but you know, I think, you know, they also cover like the way that you breathe. If you inhale and you go all the way in, it gives you a little jolt of adrenaline. And it's something that I didn't notice, that when I was 16 and I was competing, I was told, okay, take deep breaths. Just take deep breaths. Just breathe. You're gonna be fine. Just take a deep breath. And I was like, oh, no, this isn't working. And then I would try to take this deep breath, and my heart would go even faster. And then, you know, here I am reading this book 4 years later. You know, thankfully I get to compete next year and test it out. But, you know, when you inhale, you get that little burst of adrenaline, and it's why I was getting so nervous. And it's the exhale that calms you down. And they do that like in yoga and meditation.
Yes. Yeah, I'm like a big proponent of mental health. And one thing that, you know, I always talk to my therapist about is just like, what brings you back, right? What are your grounding techniques, right? And then she'll always be like, put your hand over your vagal nerve, do like a deep breath. You know, I'm just like, I just wish all of these methods were taught really early. But now, you know, I'm glad that we're actually on the call where students are watching. So like, if you're watching at home right now, you know, anytime that you just need to calm down, just take a deep breath and just like bring yourself back.
Yeah, I mean, like, self-soothing is so important too, because nobody's going to do it the way that you want to do it. Like, you may find like one or two people that, if you're able to communicate that and you even understand what you want, it takes a while to figure that out. But essentially, you're the one at the end of the day who's going to have to go in there and search the way that you want to be validated, and search the way that you want to care for yourself, and things like that can like self-soothe, or like kind of like rubbing your shoulder. Like, mine is always, okay, if I'm at practice and I don't know, let's say I do something and it ends up being really triggering, and then like my brain pulls the parachute, then the goal is to come back. So snapping my finger, or like tapping my leg, or, you know, doing something, anything that has to do with sense is like awesome.
And speaking of, like, I'm a big proponent of twerking. Twerking brings you back, right? Like,
yes. If you're ever panicking and you're crying and it's like hyperventilating, just start just shaking.
Listen to the rap girls and just twerk. I honestly, it'll bring you back. No.
I recommend like.
I'm so sorry.
No, this is awesome. But yeah.
Well, back on track, you know, besides just twerking. You know, the common experience, you know, at Texas State University's academic is, you know, at the Texas State University's academic theme. There we go. And Texas State presents more themes in academic events than any other university. I know that the 2020-2021 theme is dynamics. And when we say dynamics, we're talking about, you know, movement, it's motion, but it's more than that. Think about the motivating forces around everything, everywhere, physical forces, moral forces. So it's easy to see in how things are kind of connected and how they move, and the dynamics of things.
Yeah.
What does the term dynamics mean to you right now in this moment?
Dynamic typically, and I think people associate it with this as well, is quick, you know, naturally, to be quick, to be fast, to just get like, okay, for us, they say, if you're doing a leap, if you go up and you try to hold a split, you're not going to get that full like 180 split that they want. But if you go up and you're dynamic, and they'll snap their fingers when they say it because they like to define it as quick, then the faster you go, the higher your legs go, and it makes it seem like your split is bigger than it really is. And so I like to think of dynamic as like the fraction of a second that things happen, as like, I don't know, let's say I'm doing a skill on the uneven bars, and sometimes, which this has happened many, many times, I'll be doing a skill and I'm setting it up, and then I let go and I get ready to catch the same bar, and I'm in the air, and I'm getting ready to connect this skill into another skill.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm in the air, it's deciding, okay, I think on this one, I let go a little bit too early, and there's a possibility that I could land on the bar because I let go too early. And this is all like while I'm in the air, my brain is just ticking like a slot machine, trying to figure out what is the safest way for you to catch and continue with your routine, but also to make it look like there was no problem. And it's like, do I need to circle my feet back? But that fraction of a second, that's like kind of that's being dynamic to me.
Yeah.
That's like quick thinking and having to do your best in such a small amount of time.
Yeah. And I think about also the moments, and just beyond, gymnastics, just those moments in life where they're just like a fraction of a second, or those little moments in your life that might change the momentum of something, right? Or might change your mind about something too. And I'm curious if you relate any of that to that at all.
Yeah. Me and my friend my best friend, shout out Lainey, her and I had been kind of going through it the last couple weeks because naturally the flow of this year is just so inconsistent. And I think the inconsistency was really getting to both of us. And we both do gymnastics. We were both questioning what we were doing. And it was just, there was like this, it wasn't a low, it was just like a desert type of thing. Like, I don't know what to do next. I don't really remember what was before this. Like, I don't know what action I can take to like get myself out of here. And we both just kind of realized, like, why are we doing this? Like, what is the reason? What is the sole purpose? Why did I start this when I was a little kid? Like,
what is the motivation? What is your motivation?
Yeah, go back to before anything could have ever happened. Any competitions, any good, any bad, any injuries, anytime you wanted to quit, anytime you dominated the thing. Go back to the very beginning. Why did that start? And I think having to go back and backtrack, like, that's another version or another form of being dynamic and about exercising that quickness of like, oh, I started because in the most humble way possible, I like attention. I like to connect with other people on a stage. It makes me feel like, I have something to work for, and then I get to show it off. And I, no matter what the score is, no matter what the place is, I love what I do. And that's why I'm doing it. And I think that is a really important foundation that sometimes I forget and sometimes my best friend forgets. But when we remember that, that projects us into the next thing. And I feel like that's another form of just being dynamic.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me again of what we were talking about earlier, kind of like that grounding technique, right? Like, kind of bringing you back home. Like, what is the reason? Why am I doing this? And I think that, like, especially for like first year students, sometimes you have to realize that, right? Like, I knew that, like, I was going away to like make a difference, within my own community, and I wanted to go get knowledge and bring that back. And I think that those moments right there, we can't forget to go back and kind of remember.
Yeah. It's, and you know what, kind of going back to those roots of like who you are and why you do what you do is such an interesting thing. Because it's like, again, like me and my friend were talking about, okay, well, like, I like doing it to perform and I like attention. It's like, oh wait, in the environment that I was in as a little kid, not my family home is lit, it's great. But in the environment that I was in when I was a little kid, attention wasn't something that I really received in the way that I had wanted to. And it's so surprising that now that's what I'm wanting in the next thing. Like the motivator is completely different than when I was 16 versus where I'm at now. And I think constantly checking in with yourself and knowing that even if your motivations change, you don't have to change the end goal. You just have to reevaluate the next couple steps. And it's been such a whirlwind. It's been a huge therapy topic of like, okay, here's the reason I came back, whether it was for being angry, whether it was just because I loved it. The world may never know. But that reason changed, and then suddenly I didn't want to do it anymore. And she was like, no, I think you still want to do it, but the motivator is different now. We need to find what this means to you. And so sometimes it feels like you've lost motivation, but really it's coming from a different place, and asking yourself where it's coming from and why. You just adjust the sails. You don't have to change, the destination. So
Laurie, you better go ahead and give us this word today. I just want to say thank you. I'm like, let me receive it. I receive it. Thank you. And also, how do you, when you go back to those moments, how do you appreciate the work that you've done too? Because I also think like it's also so easy to keep going and to keep that momentum up, right? And to even realize that you're changing that motivation. But sometimes we forget to look back and actually appreciate all of the things that we've accomplished on our way there. So in what and you know, what ways do you appreciate the things that you have accomplished on your journey forward?
Yeah, you know, I'm a huge overthinker, and I'm definitely queen of it. Love that for me. My therapist has a great time. But something that I constantly struggle with is seeing where I want to be, and that's the first step, is being able to see what you want to be, who you want to be, whether that's 6 months from now, a year from now. Because if you can see that, if you can see that person that you become, and you start showing up as her or him or them tomorrow, like you show up as that person, it's going to start happening for you. But sometimes I get so caught up in who I want to be and what my goals are that I forget to acknowledge all the progress that's happened. And that's a really easy way to burn out.
Yes.
It's such an easy way to burn out, by not giving yourself the recognition of all the hard work that you've done, because then sometimes it feels like it's for nothing, and it's not. And so I think what's helped me, and this is constantly changing, but for now, what's helped me is looking at things factually, because sometimes my emotions can be very, very heavy and juggled. And so it's like, okay, factually in January, I could not do X, Y, or Z in this skill. Factually in January, my headspace was completely different. And this was a different topic that we were talking about and that I was journaling about. Factually, when I was heading into practice, my mind was different right before I started a skill. And that's huge progress to me. And now I get to see where I'm at, and it's like, okay, well, now that that's happened, what changed? You know, so it's a lot of thinking that's happening, but facts is the best way for at least to keep myself sane.
Yeah. And you know, I always have like coworkers or like even friends who always are like, keep a file of all your accomplishments, or like keep like a photo album or something that you can just kind of like go to. And I'm wondering, you know, one of my last questions before we wrap up and kind of throw this, I'll throw the questions over to folks who kind of submitted them. You know, is there a symbol or is there something that always brings you back?
Ooh, you know, that's a really good one. I actually have a tattoo of an olive branch that
I got it. Look, I got a pine tree right here. Look, we're cool. Like we're good.
Look at us. Would have thought, not me. There's one other tattoo that is possibly happening within the next couple weeks.
Okay.
But I think, you know, it's not a physical symbol, but it's something that I've been thinking about for the last year. And I went to a competition, and there was a lot happening. There was a lot happening. And there was this one lady who had approached me, and I knew her not too well, but she was like, you know, I knew you when you were a little kid, and I've seen all the things that you did. And it was wonderful. Don't get me wrong. And you were really brave before, but you're a dynamite now. And that is constantly something that I am trying to embroider into my brain. It's something that I literally want on me so I can look at it and remember, like, no matter what stage I'm in my life, back then I was so brave, and I'm proud of that little kid who was brave. And right now I'm a dynamite and I'm ready for it. So yeah.
I think about Katy Perry's Firework, you know, just like get that playing in the background. You know, before we wrap up this section, one of my last questions, and I always love to end my interviews with this, especially now when I feel like it's so hard to find. How are you finding joy? What's giving you joy? You know, is it music? Is it dancing? You know, what is it that kind of reminds you of all the good things in the world?
Yeah, honestly, music, dancing, sometimes gymnastics is a huge creative outlet for me, and it's a place that I can physically and even creatively exercise all these feelings. And sometimes gymnastics is the reason why I need a creative outlet. And so things like music and, like, you know, maybe not binging a bunch of shows, but and watching TV shows that make me feel motivated.
What are you watching right now?
Well, my favorite shows, we've got Lucifer, Supergirl, Money Heist. I mean, there's, like, you know, She-Ra, all these like different shows, but all of them have like an empowering, you know, connection to it.
You watch Legend of Korra?
I'm almost all caught up. I saw it like a while ago, and I was like, okay, I got to rewatch it. But yes, so yeah, there's that. I got into screenwriting, which was a lot of fun. I ended up writing like a 50-page pilot over the last like couple months.
Whoa, wait, are we gonna see it eventually?
Possibly. I mean, I love it to pieces, and I'm starting on the second episode just to see what it turns into, and it's become a huge creative outlet for me, and it's about like siblings, and it's a place where I get to always connect back home, even though it's highly fiction. So things like that I think have just been so important, having a creative outlet and just loving the little things.
Yeah.
You know, if you go out looking for happiness, it's unfortunately going to be really disappointing, but if you go out looking for balance, then happiness kind of trickles in along the way, you know?
Or we're going to need you to write another book, girl.
I got you.
Well, now I'm going to sort of turn it over to the questions that have been submitted. I want to start with Kimberly Wong from San Jose, California, Texas State student. So the first question is, how do you manage to keep such high motivation and energy while having the same rigorous schedule day in and day out over the course of years to achieve your goal? And have you ever had periods where you felt like you've lost your motivation or wanted to quit? And what did you do to get yourself back on track?
Yeah, you know, I think this covers what we had talked about a little while ago, just recently even. I was questioning if this was still something I wanted to do. I'm supposed to be technically retired at 20, like, you know, like for gymnastics, like, maybe not retired, but like taking a break. I don't know what the future holds. Am I coming back? Am I done? Who knows? But, you know, at this point, I'm not supposed to be doing gymnastics. And sometimes when things get hard, it's an unfortunate thought to come back to, which is, I'm not even supposed to be here in the first place. And it's like, that's never going to work. That doesn't help me. That doesn't help the people around me. But what does help is figuring out what's going to spark my joy right now, if it's not this thing, and not giving up on it right now because I'm feeling this way. Because this one feeling isn't everything. It's just a feeling. I have fingernails. It's
all about humbling that ego. Like,
yeah, it's like there's that quote, I have fingernails, I am not a fingernail. I have earrings, I'm not an earring. I have feelings, I'm not my feelings.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So that's my biggest advice. It's just that you're not your feelings. Find little things to add more feelings.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much. Look, that even gave me a good, you know, some good advice. So I appreciate that. So we also have one from Joe Soto from Pflugerville, Texas. They're a Texas State staff member and also a Texas State alumnus. And one of the questions is, as one of the world's top athletes, you obviously have to be fully dialed in both mentally and physically for an event such as the Olympics. Hearing that the games have been postponed must be really unnerving. How did that impact your focus and training, and what have you done to stay on track?
Yeah, I think at first, you know, I cried for a little bit just because, and every athlete, I think, kind of felt this way in the sense that we'd prefer postponement over canceling any day, but it was still hard information to take in because it takes us months to peak at the right time. We're working months, years into this, and we're training so that way at this specific moment, we are the best physical person that we can be. And so to train and to put all this effort in, you know, a year beforehand, only for the rug to get swept, and it's like, oh, you got to do that all again. It can feel really overwhelming and daunting, especially knowing what you're going to walk into. And so there was a lot of like heaviness at first, but then, oh wait, there's more. But then I had realized, and it's like this for everybody too, but this extra year gives me time to work on technique that I didn't have time to do because we were scrambling to put some things together. This gives me time to add in some skills that I have never competed before. This gives me time to upgrade, and it gives me time to mold myself into an even better athlete. And that goes for everybody. And I think that's why athletes are so looked up upon, is because like when things like a postponement of an Olympics happen, you know, at first, of course, we're human and it hurts. But then it's also the next thought, at least for me, is like, okay, now that it's a year later, what am I going to do to blow this out of the water that I couldn't do this year? Now that I have an extra year, I want to look back and be like, I'm grateful for that extra year, you know? So
yeah, and rather looking at it as a challenge, it seems it's more of and what can I gain from this extra
How
time?
can I be better?
Yeah.
Yeah, mentally, physically, just how can I be better? How can I be better for me? How can I be better for the people around me? How can I be better for my family or my chosen family, whoever that is for you? But at the end of the day, how can I be better and be my best self? And what is this next year going to do for me? Because also a year is a year, good year, bad year, a year is a year. And it's taking all the things that you can't control and putting it kind of to the side and looking at these things and understanding that they're there and acknowledging them, and then taking all the things that you can control and going full reins, baby.
I love that. So I need you like in an alarm clock, right? Like every morning I just hear Laurie Hernandez give me this like motivational speech about why I need to get out of bed and not push snooze. So
I'm gonna be like, it's okay, you got it, wake up, sis, go down today. Like, don't be shy, kick their butts.
Well, going on to our next question. So the next one is from No Castro John. I believe I said that right. I'm so sorry if I did say that wrong. From Houston, Texas, Texas State student. What challenges did you come across in getting where you are today? What drives and motivates you every day to get up and keep going, basically? So like when you wake up, what is it that you're thinking, the first thought in your head?
Realistically, the first thought that I'm thinking in my head is what's like, 'cause you know how I mentioned earlier, like happiness is the little things, looking for that. It's what's the little thing that's going to make me happy right now, because I just need to like get up. And sometimes, you know, for people like me who struggle with mental health, sometimes that's really hard. So looking at just like going full on Anna from Frozen / Kristen Bell, like what's the next right thing? What's the next little thing that's going to get me excited? Because if I'm up, then I'm up and I'm ready. So I think things like that. I think the hardest challenge or struggle that I've come across so far, aside from, you know, injuries happen. I kind of see it as my body's way of telling me it's time for you to rest, and you're not listening to me, so I'm gonna have to make you listen. So that's how I've always thought of it, and I've always come back stronger. I think the hardest part, there was like a case that was opened up with USA Gymnastics. It was with an old coach of mine, and it ended up going down for emotional and verbal abuse, and that was terrifying. It still is a little wonky to talk about, but the more I talk about it, the more weight that comes off every time, and it's an interesting thing of how that works. But I think the years after the Olympics and having time to process that, I mean, the first 2 years afterwards, you know, through 2018, I chose not to. I didn't want to look at it. I was like, okay, whatever, that's life. And then I chose to come back into gymnastics, and that made me look at a lot of things. There were a lot of things that I was going to have to redo, and the only way to, you know, work with that is to go right through it. And so I think talking about it and then having this case opened up on an Olympic year and having to, you know, speak on a panel, that was terrifying. It really it really scrambled things a little bit, but at the same time, it's also letting others know, like, this kind of behavior isn't okay, and by doing this and by showing people it's not okay, then we protect kids in the future and we protect other people. And you know, we're in a different generation now. If that was okay before, which it shouldn't be, but if it was okay before, it's not okay now. And you know, get with the times, homie.
And I, you know, and I'm going to move on to the next question next, but I also think about, again, the example that you're setting for people, right? As like a Latina woman who's actually speaking out about this. I feel like in communities of color, we don't necessarily talk, or we really don't know how to begin those conversations around abuse, especially women. And I think that right now we're seeing yet another wave of, right, like of feminism in many different ways, whether we look at hip hop, whether we look at politics, right? And so, yeah, I don't know. I just kind of thought about that in that moment when you were saying that.
Yeah, and a lot of that, I mean, my parents are my rock, but my mom, when she had first found out about it, she took action immediately. Like she did not hesitate. I was like, whoa, she's got finger, like, whoa, she really sent that email. You type away, sis. But to see someone, you know, take such a fast action on it, Like, it wasn't like, oh man, am I gonna, and I'm sure that if it was just to her, which I know that she's also been through a lot, if it was just her, then working around it is huge. And if it was just me trying to handle it on my own, I think I would have just kept quiet and tried to figure it out. Because I mean, 2016, I was 16 at the time. I don't know what I'm doing yet. You know, I'm still kind of learning my way. I still am learning my way. I'm 20 now. But I think her mama bear instincts kicked in, and she was like, no, we're doing something about it. And it, you know, at that time she had sent in a report, and because of her action, it led to protecting future kids and you know, helping a lot of people out there. I think that was so important, and that wave really started from my parents and from my mom. So
yeah, and it took like such a complicated, very ugly experience to come out on the other side, it seems like, to the kind of this point where you feel like you've grown, or you feel stronger, it seems.
oh yeah, I mean, it, now that kind of social media, or like the world knows, it's like a huge weight is to the side, and now I can just show up as my own. It's not like I have anything to hide, not that that is something to hide, but it's out there now, you know, it's there. And I think that was so huge. And like, yeah, it's still terrifying. Yeah, like there's gonna be a lot of little things that will come up, you know, in the future that I'm sure I'll have to deal with, but for now everything is good, and it's all because of speaking out. And I know that's scary. I didn't want to do it, but in doing so, it made things better.
Yeah. Well, I thank you, and I, you know, and I admire your bravery, and a lot of people all over the world, as you know, admire your bravery as well. So thank you for sharing that experience with us. Yeah. So Veronica Krylova, so sorry if I did that again. I'm so sorry. From Houston, first year student at Texas State. Woo! So the first question is, Ms. Hernandez, you went through a lot in order to reach your goals and be successful. How have your experiences in life and gymnastics shaped you into the person you are today? And then also, what advice may you give to young people who are just starting to experience the world and who may not even know what they want to do? I think in like a past interview, you mentioned how you knew from, you know, the moment you were little, you were like, I'm doing gymnastics. I don't care what y'all say. You like, even after you were injured, you were like, so I'm about to go back out there. What's going on? And so that is a great question for people who don't know, you know, what direction that they may want to go through, or who may need to experience more things in order to get there. What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, this definitely goes back to my conversation with my best friend. The FaceTime call we had was literally yesterday, and she hit me with I'm 19 and I'm so old, and I haven't started my life yet, and like I'm still stuck on one thing and I haven't started the other. And I was like, homegirl, we have so much time. Like, there's something, like, even with quarantine, when it first happened, it turned into a productivity contest of like, what are all the things that you can accomplish, instead of being like, the world is on fire, are you okay?
And so just like stopping and acknowledging that, you know, this is not normal. So
it was like that whole thing. It's the same concept of, for some odd reason in 2020, multiple generations have decided that your like late teens, early mid 20s is like your peaking point. You're supposed to have everything together, and that's not fair. That's not fair at all. I got so, I mean, lucky really is the word. I got so lucky that at 5, I had a passion for something. It was like a magnetic pull. That's how I knew I wanted it. It was like immediate. I felt drawn to it. It was full on Icarus mode. And so I think connecting with that and really listening to it, because when you're a kid, you know, you don't you're not really paying attention to, like, you don't like, you get bad thoughts, but you don't really know what those are yet. You don't know, they just kind of float around. And I think at 5 saying I want something, I'm gonna get it, that was really lucky for me. So if you turn 40 and you're like, I want something, I'm gonna get it, that's your calling. And if you're not meant to find it at 20, then I guarantee you're not going to find it at 20, because that's not your calling yet. Your calling right now is to be the best person you can be. So find the thing that gives you, you know, this burst of joy. Find the thing that makes your heart like want to explode when you think about it. Like, if it makes you feel like it's a magnetic pull, if it makes you feel like home, then like you have to do it, even if it's going to disappoint other people. As long as it's, you know, a safety net for you and for others, and it makes you happy, like you have to go for it. Because if you really tune into that, like you're gonna change the world. It's crazy of the things that we don't listen to in our hearts because we've decided that, you know, we have to listen and follow the paths of everybody else. Otherwise, you know, otherwise we're weird or we're scared or whatnot. I
Yeah.
guarantee you, no matter what age you are, nobody knows what they're doing. So just do what you want, as long as it's
Listen,
safe.
I'm only 25 and I'm like, I got how many more years? What? I'm like, wait, huh? And like we live in such a microwave like type of lifestyle right now, if that makes sense. And one thing I know that I repeat to myself constantly is that your ministry is different than somebody else's ministry, right? Like y'all don't have the same ministry, and you have to stay in your lane, which is has a lot to do with you being an Olympic athlete, right? It's staying focused and kind of staying in your lane and knowing what to focus on and what not to.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, you know, over time you get to figure out like what's really important and what needs to be removed. Sometimes that's thoughts, sometimes that's people, sometimes that's your physical placement of where you are in the world, and listening to that gut feeling of what makes you feel safe and what makes you feel at home. And also, here's the thing, I actually shout out TikTok. You know, I saw this on TikTok that was like, the more comfortable that you are in your lifestyle right now, the more uncomfortable you will be doing literally anything. So just by staying uncomfortable and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, you're more likely to go out and trust your gut instincts and to try new things and to tap into that, you know, best version of yourself. You're never going to be comfortable. So shoot for balance and shoot for the little things, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree. So we just had an incoming question from Twitter. So from Salim Para, it says, hi, Laurie, and hi, DaLyah. I'm a freshman music ed major here at Texas State, choir director. How do you think I can use my small platform in the future to spread awareness about the importance of diversity? It's a good question.
Ooh, I think, you know, social media is kind of like the new newspaper nowadays, and whether your voice is one follower or it's millions of followers, you're still speaking into a void that people someday at some point are going to see. And I think especially whether it's through social media or it's in person, if you see, this is such a cliche quote, but it's like, if you see something, do something about it. If you see something wrong, if you see someone not being treated fairly, there's like that theory of, or like they call it like the shopping cart theory, that if you go grocery shopping, you're in the parking lot, do you put your shopping cart away because it is safe for other people, it's safe for cars, or do you just leave it on the curb because you gotta go? And I can guarantee you I've done both. I'm pretty sure everybody's done both, but like, you know, and it's being mindful, and that goes into like, you see something happening and go, oh, okay, somebody else is gonna put that cart away for me, or like somebody else is gonna go help that person. I guarantee you everybody around you is thinking that. They're thinking you're gonna go help that person. And it's like that, therefore this person who's in distress is stuck dealing with something that has been happening for centuries. And it's like, why assume somebody else is going to help when you're right there? You're fully capable. You can go and be that person just to speak up. Yeah, it's scary, but if you're doing it together, then that's how it works. So if you see something off, if you see some form of injustice, even if it seems so small and like it doesn't matter, I guarantee you it does. Some of the smallest things said in passing to me have still stuck with me today. So things like racism and like systemic racism and things like commenting on somebody's skin are things that are really just, you know, overall nasty and you know, are like an infected heart. That's going to stick with you forever. And even if you think it's a small thing, still do something about it. And I think that goes for in person and through social media.
Yeah, being an ally, being anti-racist, like it's not just about just sitting aside, right, and just doing what you want. It's actually actively engaging. So,
Yeah.
well, thank you so much, Laurie. I think right now we're about to wrap it up, but this was such a fun conversation. I'm really honored to have talked to you. You know, I got my little nuggets that I'm going to take. You know, I'm going to hit you up and we're going to talk about The Body Keeps Score, because let me tell you about a book. It's so good. You know, before we wrap up, are there any lasting words that you want to leave us with tonight?
I mean, just thank you so much for giving me a platform and to, you know, show all these different parts of me. I think having a place to talk about everything is really important, you know, and I love being able to just kind of section interviews into one particular subject. Of course, that's the most natural thing to do, but to allow the good, the bad, the ugly, the exciting, the balance to coexist, like that's life. That's how life works. And it all works together. So just, I know this year kind of stinks, but hang in there, because there's going to be great things coming, and it's all individual. You know, if you see somebody succeeding, it doesn't mean that you're never going to succeed. It just means that your time is different. So just wait.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Laurie. You have a good night. Stay safe out there. Good luck with practice and everything else on your, on your journey.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
Bye.